Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again. And that must mean that I'm Professor Robert E.G. Black, and this is the Groundhog Day Project.
It's like we're stuck. You know, like a needle on a scratch record.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
It's a thing where the same day keeps happening?
I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
Time.
I promise to explain everything later, but I need you to trust me.
Slow down! What are you, in a damn time loop or something?
Groundhog Day Project blog, day 247, dated 5th April 2014. I've seen Larry eat. As we get back closer to the minute with that line, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Benesh and avoiding talking about the TV show Daybreak. Or maybe that's the time loop of the week this week. I haven't watched it in a while. Daybreak. Time loop of the week right now.
Most of life is just junk, right? It's filler. And then there's these moments.
It's a perfect day. You couldn't have planned a day like this.
Well, you can. It just takes an awful lot of work.
When all the randomness turns into something perfect. It's like life's dropping all the bullshit just for a second to show us how amazing it could be all the time if it wanted to.
I don't know. I think maybe we're supposed to become like better people. Though I honestly don't even know how that could be possible.
Whoa, now. Sounds like someone's got a case of the time loop blues.
Ever think about it? We must miss so many of them. All those tiny perfect things are just poof, gone. Lost forever. But not today.
You can make right what once went wrong.
That is a disturbingly inspirational idea, Mark.
I know, but what is this? Some kind of time loop, like a gypsy curse? Is the universe giving us a cosmic test, or am I just going fucking crazy?
Time.
The last revision is what counts, apparently.
What if we found them all? All the perfect things in this one town, in this one day. We could collect them.
Stars. I should remember this. Let's see, I'll read you the premise. Stars Taye Diggs, Moonblood Good, Jonathan Banks, Mitch Pileggi, various other people. Detective Brett Hooper is having a particularly bad day, one where absolutely nothing will go his way. If that wasn't bad enough, it looks like Hopper is repeating the same day over and over again. On this day, he's been accused of murdering Assistant DA Alberto Garza, and no one believes his rock-solid alibi. He winds up on the run, where he finds out that his loved ones are in danger too. The next morning, the trauma starts all over again. In order to break the cycle, Hopper needs to find out who framed him and why, effectively solving the mystery surrounding Garza's death. Premise itself, pretty good. The show did not do well in the ratings. It was canceled and then brought back on ABC's website. This is before it was like streaming, because the show was in 2006. It premiered in November, so during sweeps, didn't do well. So they pulled it off the air. It was only 13 episodes total. I don't think it was intended to have a second season. I don't remember it ending on any cliffhanger, but maybe it did. The fun thing with it, aside from immediate time loop markers, we get through a couple loops in the first episode, or into a third, I think, or a fourth loop. We have episodes where he makes very different decisions, he saves different people, or tells different people what's going on, and along the way things change. Meaning, after he's convinced his partner of stuff, she's now more on his side in the next loop than she was before, as if she remembers him explaining, except I think she, if I remember right, she doesn't remember the details, but she kind of trusts him more. And when he finds out someone is against him in one loop, they act quicker the next time, as if they remember that he knew. It's similar in a way to a thing I haven't done as a time loop of the week yet, but I think I mentioned it last week, an episode of Lois and Clark called was the night before Mr. Mixapixelic. Is that how you say his name? I think that's the title. It's not the time loop of the week today, so I'll worry about that later. But, or if you want an obvious example you're probably more likely to have seen, Happy Death Day, where injuries carry over into the next loop. And in the Lois and Clark example, if someone other than Clark has found out about the loop, the next time through, they remember. And so, as more and more people catch on to the fact that time is looping, Mr. Mixapixelic? I feel like I'm missing a syllable in there. He finally shows up, except he's not the fancy little imp-looking guy. It's just... what's his name? Howie Mandel? Howie Mandel. With, I think, a colorful suit. Just kind of a cop-out, but whatever. The episode's pretty good. I'll use that as a time loop maybe next week. Maybe I'll watch it again. I do have it on the computer. I also have all the episodes of Daybreak, and I have Daybreak on DVD, but 13 episodes, who's got time for that? I've already watched the show twice. Anyway, I've seen Larry eat. Daybreak episode 3 is entitled, What If He Lets Her Go? Benesh's next section is about the respiration metaphor. These two things probably don't go together. Oh well. This is the day that changes everything, instead of that bad day line from episode 2. Good recap, though. Oddly, the episode begins by calling this day 1. I don't think they did that before, but maybe this episode is going to cover a whole lot of days. Hopper wakes with a bullet wound, but it's fresh. Just open, see? He got shot, and the bullet wound is still there when he wakes up. He sneaks into the bathroom and bandages it. Meanwhile, Benesh fits a few details into the respiration metaphor. Phil as a blowhard. Phil blowing smoke at the tip-top. Phil blowing a bubble while learning piano. And Phil performing mouth-to-mouth on O'Reilly. She also includes Phil performing the Heimlich because that restores breath to Buster. Benesh makes the same link I have before, I think, or maybe I'm just remembering the pink tab here labeled O'Reilly to Buster. Phil not saving O'Reilly to Phil saving Buster. Benesh writes, the digestive metaphor and the respiration metaphor are linked through Phil Connors saving Buster from choking on his food. The failed attempt to save the old man, first by feeding him and then by performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on him, could be seen as a rough draft, foreshadowing Phil Connors' later successful revision as applied to Buster. I like this one. I don't like the next one. More subtly, the reproductive and breathing metaphors are linked through the girl piano student in pink, who Phil Connors emulates as seen through the pink bursting gum bubble, a feminine, child symbol that resembles a lung and deflates as the ego of the learner must. There are so many stretches there that I am tempted to make a pun about working out. To suggest that somehow a reference to a female, if the bubble can even be said to be that, means some reproductive symbology is reductionist, sexist, simplistic, and unwarranted. Assume we buy the pink-to-pink connection here. What does it matter then that the bubble is a child symbol? Layering the symbols on each other makes them seem less meaningful to me. I see Phil's bubble as a figure of playfulness, a sign that even as he has gotten more serious, he hasn't completely changed. Bubblegum is generally pink, just like snow is generally white, and the sky is generally blue. That generally white line is a dig at Benesh, the generally blue line is a dig at myself. These colors don't have to mean anything. You know what respiration bit Benesh apparently misses? Phil's weather report. Opening scene of the film. He mimes blowing the front on the big screen behind him.
But look out, here comes trouble. Oh boy, front coming our way. Look out.
Let's assume Benesh is onto something. What's the progression? If there's no progression, I say this stuff is just coincidence. The progression is not linear exactly, though. Phil blows the clouds, fake. Phil smokes at the tip-top, real. Phil has a cigar/cigarette, whatever the man with no name has, I think it's a cigarello, in his mouth on his date with Lorraine, but doesn't seem to be smoking. Phil blows the bubble during his piano lesson. Phil fails at mouth-to-mouth with O'Reilly. Phil saves Buster from choking. It almost becomes more real and more effective as it goes. Benesh suggests, each metaphor evolves from gratifying self at the expense of others, hitting on Rita in a hostile and disrespectful manner, and then deceiving and sleeping with Nancy, rejecting the company of and mocking Larry, and showing off by blowing clouds. Yay, she did catch this one. In a physical demonstration of his later assertion,
I make the weather.
Nice catch. To crude, doomed experiments that are either the right things for the wrong reason or misguided acts done for the right reasons. Making a snowman with, but failing in seducing Rita. Experimenting unimaginatively with the circumstances by indulging in gluttony. I reject the suggestion Phil is being unimaginative. Before I complain about the imaginative line, I would reference something I had brought up in a completely different entry, and something she should have had here, going from failing to make the snowman, making a snowman, then failing to make the snowman, the deleted scene of Phil cutting the heads off the ice sculptures, to Phil making the ice sculptures. First the angel and then Rita. There should have been some sort of progression there. Anyway, what was she saying? Making a snowman with, but failing in seducing Rita. Experimenting unimaginatively with the circumstances by indulging in gluttony. I reject the suggestion Phil is being unimaginative. Just look at the dessert on the right in this shot. It's the shot of his table full of pastries and desserts. Chocolate pudding, an Oreo, and pink wafer cookies. That is some time loop imagination in action right there. And neither successfully saving the old man nor truly accepting his death. Until, he apparently does. To honoring others by the end. Reproducing Rita in sculpture, which Benesh misidentifies as ice on page 104. Feeding the hungry old man, and saving Buster from choking. In each metaphor, the relationship begins with complacency, indifference, or mild antagonism, escalates to active aggression, and ends in integration. Let's talk about that active aggression line from Benesh. Nothing she lists in the paragraph amounts to active aggression, so we must backtrack slightly. The reproductive metaphor, for Benesh, if anything starts with antagonism and aggression, Phil mocking Rita in the van, Phil's line about his pelvic tilt, and then finds its midpoint at something else. What is the date night sequence here? Or his liaison with Nancy Taylor? This is not aggressive middle, nor is his time spent with Rita on God Day. The digestive metaphor also begins with antagonism. Sure, Phil mocking Larry eating, not to mention the frickin' blood sausage bit. I'm talking to myself there, sorry. I missed it. But is Phil's gluttony the active aggression here? Is smoking the active aggression in the respiration metaphor? Is blowing that bubblegum bubble? Benesh chooses terminology that neither exactly follows her own examples nor really proves her own point, which is especially problematic because I do think she is making good points. It is easier, though maybe not adequate, to suggest a more simple transition with Phil's relationships, or relationships, in quotes, given the metaphors. For example, as I've gotten written in the margin on page 104, Phil's first introduction with Larry is to reject. His last to embrace, figuratively. His first with Rita, to reject. His last to embrace, then carry. Phil's relationships with Larry, with Rita, with O'Reilly, sort of, with Mrs. Lancaster, mocking her with the cappuccino and espresso line, even with Nancy Taylor. These all begin as either impersonal or deliberately antagonistic, and they transition into something more personal, even friendly. His hugging Ned, the exception that proves the point, I suppose. The interesting thing is, Phil's relationship with himself follows this same progression. He is sarcastic and insulting, deflecting his own self-hatred, then he learns to Well, maybe he doesn't like himself, but he certainly learns to live with himself. Today's reason to repeat a day forever, to do better than just live with myself.
Knew you were gonna say that.
This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops.
What is wrong in the end which never comes? Or which comes again and again, lapping, like waves.
Since the Big Bang set everything in motion, everything that happens in this universe has to be the way it is. Particles unfolding the way they're destined to.
How do you sleep at night? You've never seen Groundhog Day?
Yeah, you know Groundhog Day is not a documentary.
Remember when Groundhog Day was just a movie?